Welcome back to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friends. You may have noticed that we took a little bit of time off. This is what we call in the Hamptons Tumbleweed Tuesday. If you live in a resort town, you may have a Tumbleweed Tuesday as well. It's the day after Labor Day when all the squatters who were the summer renters have picked up and gone back home and gone back to school. It's also just, I think, rhythmically that season that we're always feeling like September 1st is back to school. And for many of you, it's back to work, back to strategy, getting through Q4 and thinking about what does the next year hold for me. And today we have a very special guest. Her name is Sailynn Doyle. She is your fun business coach, and we'll tell you what fun means in a minute. And we're going to talk about scaling. And I know many of you are not at this stage yet, but if we begin your business with the end in mind, it will help you build a sustainable foundation and infrastructure that makes it easier to scale later. And there's seasons of growth in your business, which we'll talk about. So this is for you if you are just getting started, or if you are in that messy middle of mid six figures and yet you feel that that seven-figure revenue goal still feels so elusive. So let me tell you a little bit about Sailynn. We met in the Entreprenista League, which you've heard me talk about before. Sailynn went from working 5 jobs in 7 years to building a multi-million-dollar empire. She knows firsthand what it takes to break through the six-figure ceiling where 98% of entrepreneurs get stuck. And after purchasing a senior home care franchise in 2007, she quickly scaled to 7 figures, but found herself trapped in that 80-hour work week. Refusing to accept burnout as the price of success, Sailynn developed a revolutionary 4-pillar foundation that transformed her business from exhausting growth to sustainable scale. And now she coaches 6-figure women entrepreneurs who are ready to join the 2%. There's only 2% of women entrepreneurs that scale past $1 million plus in revenue. And through her signature 90-day legacy business system, which we'll share with you, she helps ambitious women build the foundation needed to shift from the exhausting grow phase to the profitable scale phase of your business. Welcome to Life After Corporate, Sailynn Doyle.
Thank you so much for having me, Deborah. I so appreciate being here.
And so your 5 jobs, I'm loving that you're here, and I'm loving that we both woke up this morning thinking, what were we thinking to book a podcast interview on the Tuesday after a holiday? I've been off for 2 weeks. I haven't been in the office. So this is my my first foray back into business. It's a great way to start the week. With a beautiful conversation. So would love to hear a little bit about what was going on in your world. What were those 5 jobs in 7 years? Were you in corporate at that point, or were you already on the entrepreneur track? Tell us how you got to purchasing that first franchise.
Yeah. After I graduated college, my mom forced me to go to college. I really wasn't a person who was big on school. I just thought, okay, then I'm just going to work a job and everything's going to be great. But in a 7-year time frame, I got laid off from 2 positions and also had a short-term contract. And so it really put me on edge. And I was desperate to reclaim control over my time and money. And so one sunny, warm Sunday in August back in 2006, I was sitting on my boyfriend's boat, and the girl next to me said, "What do you want to do?" And out of my mouth popped, "Start my own business." I think she actually meant for like dinner or drinks later, but you could tell that this frustration over these jobs and not having control. And the job I was currently in at the time was starting to go through a corporate transition. I was getting nervous again that this was going to be another layoff coming. And so I walked into the office on Monday morning, dragged myself in there after the Sunday, and there was an email in my inbox and it said, "Have you ever thought of owning your own business?" And I was like, Like, this is meant to be.
The angel choirs came out and the lightning bolt struck.
Yeah, like all the signs, right? And what it ended up being was a franchise consulting company. And it was the best experience that I ever went on because this gentleman walked me through the process of what kind of business I wanted. And, at 26, 27 years old, I really had no idea. I just knew I wanted control over my time and money again.
Yeah. Yeah, and, how prescient of you because what happened in 2008, 2009, it's like the
Mm.
money fell out of the market, there were tons of layoffs, so you probably, had this I think entrepreneurs always have an inner knowing when they don't even know they have an inner knowing, and that there's something pulling you to something different to bring you to a different, future, and if you're brave enough to tap into that intuition and then also follow the breadcrumbs. Years ago, I used to talk about once you set an intention in place, the
Mm.
universe starts dropping breadcrumbs, right? And if we're not tuned into that channel, you'll completely pass it over. And so you were tuned in and you took on the opportunity. And what happened after that conversation was that when you purchased the franchise?
Yeah, so I went on a journey with him for a couple months and we looked at everything from dog training to closets to smoothie shops to sub shops to everything you could think of. And I really just didn't find anything that kind of like gave me like excitement. And then unfortunately, my boyfriend's father passed unexpectedly Thanksgiving weekend and it kind of shook me up a little bit, and wouldn't you know, the universe the next week sent me this woman who wanted to get in with the business that I was working for. And I said to her, "Is your business a franchise?" And she said, "Yes." And I was like, "Can I come talk to you?" And between, really that 30-day period, I signed on the line and purchased a franchise the last couple days of 2006 and jumped in. And I really just did what you said. I listened to what was being sent my way and it felt good compared to all the other things that I had looked at.
Yeah, I really want that to land because for many corporate women who, especially those who've been in the workforce for 20 plus years, it's we're so deconditioned to listen to our own intuition, right? And we're more driven by our analytical skills, meeting goals and things like that. So I talk about an identity shift in entrepreneurship, and this is a really key piece of it because you shift from mind to heart, from
Mm.
thinking to feeling,
Yes.
and feeling your way through this entrepreneurial journey. So I'm glad you brought that up. So what was that journey like from what were some of the lessons that you learned in building that business past seven figures?
Yeah. So the reason I purchased a franchise is because I wanted that, business in a box, right?
Mhm.
They said they had a proven business model. At the time, they had been in business about 10 years. They had, hundreds of franchises across the world at that time. And I basically went in with the thought that if someone else can do it, then I can do it too. And so I did what they said pretty much exactly for 3 years. And in 2010, it was a dreary weekday morning, 9 a.m. I should have been celebrating hitting $1 million in revenue, but instead I was sitting in my car crying after completing another shift that one of my team members had called out sick for. And I realized at that point that I had done everything that I had been told to do and I hadn't have put my heart, as you just said, into building my business. I basically just copy and pasted. And so that was my like draw a line in the sand moment, right? I said, I cannot keep going on. I had been working 80 plus hours for 3 years. Sure, I had $1 million business and a six-figure salary, which is what they coached us to do, but I had no life. My relationships were in the dump. And I was starting to feel the mental and physical strain it had been going on for a long time. And to be honest, I was in complete burnout. I wouldn't admit that, but I was in complete burnout. And so that was my shift to really saying, okay, I hustled to a million, but now I've built this business that I no longer love. And I was actually on the point of hanging up the for sale sign and saying, if this is success, then I don't want it, right? It wasn't worth it. I was working half the hours at my corporate job and making the same money. So I
Yeah.
could have gone back and done that.
Yeah, and many people don't realize and there's a choice point of deciding if you want to scale or if you don't want to scale.
Mhm.
Because truthfully, in all honesty, as a solopreneur selling your services, you can make more money or keep more money that you make than if you decide to go on a path to scale. Because when you're scaling, you're reinvesting in the business. You have to build an infrastructure that pulls you out of the business, which means you have to hire other people or automate things, and that costs money.
Mm.
And so you can make more money as a solopreneur selling your consulting services than building a business at scale. So I just wanted to pull that out too as another truth point that
Well,
scaling isn't for everyone, and that $1 million, that seven-figure holy grail is not for everyone either. So I'm really curious how you went from burnout. And thank you for normalizing that, because I wrote a post a few weeks ago about when you begin to resent your business, it's a sure sign that something needs to shift. So how did you go from that place of burnout and resentment to building something that actually worked for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, like I said, back then I would have never admitted to being burnt out. Now I think it's much more talked about, but it's still something that we as women see as like a failure, right? Like, how come I can't build this business without all of this stress and anxiety and fatigue and exhaustion and all of that? So for me and what I coach my clients on is we start right in the beginning. I had to really dig deep and figure out what it was that I wanted. I am not a workaholic, right? I was not looking for a full-time job. Unfortunately, I had bought a franchise model that was based on a 40-hour owner operator model. And so they wanted me to work 40 hours in the business, but that was not what I wanted. I wanted to make a lot of money and work part time. And so I had to dig in to figure out what I wanted and then how I was going to implement the systems in order to get where I needed to go. Now, I did meet with a friend who was a coach at the time at my mom's encouragement. She saw me burning out. And, I put the appointment in my calendar as, secret. So none of my staff could see it. We met at this like shady diner down the plaza kind of deal.
Oh my gosh.
I kind of went out the back door of my office and didn't tell anyone where I was going because I was ashamed that at that point that I needed help because I was a problem solver. I was a fixer. I had always been able to figure everything out on my own. And the fact that I needed to ask for help was really like, what is wrong with me? You know what I mean? Like, why can't you figure this out? And so I met with him and he was like, tell me what's going on. And I basically vomited all of my problems for the past 3 years on him. And at the end, he summed it up into three things I needed to work on. But the big ultimate theme was my business lacks systems. I thought I had systems, but I really didn't. They were either outdated, inefficient, or there was none altogether. And so my open door policy was more like a revolving door in my office. And the only time that I could get a piece of quiet was after 5 o'clock when I would throw off my suit jacket, throw off my heels, and get stuff done in the office till 7, 8 o'clock at night. And so I spent the next 2 years essentially rebuilding my business based upon what I wanted. And fast forward now I know, and what I teach women is that can be done in 90 days. I did it in 2 years because I was too stubborn too cheap. I don't know, whatever it was, ashamed to invest with that coach when I should have, because I know now he could have gotten me quicker, better, faster results. But I did it on my own, lots more tears and, experiences. But in the end, I was able 2 years later to leave my business for 30 days. We came down here to sunny South Florida and it didn't fall apart. Nothing major happened. I wasn't attached to my cell phone the whole time. And it really opened my eyes to what was possible.
Yes.
And that was a light bulb moment for me.
I love this conversation, Sailynn, because you're pulling out so many of the feelings and milestones and pitfalls that many of us fall into. That being ashamed to ask for help
Mm,
is a trauma
mhm,
response that women, and typically only women, I believe, have because in corporate, it's not safe to not know.
mm,
Like we had to, claw our way up the corporate ladder. We had to abide by some unwritten rules for
mm.
female leaders. And so being vulnerable and asking for help and admitting that you don't know the answer is something that takes great courage. So first of all, congratulations for getting there. And I just wanted to say to our listeners, if you're in that space, if you're feeling that shame, it's your right to ask for help. In fact, it will get you there so much sooner, so much faster. In fact, I just hired a new coach that I start with today, made the
Yay,
decision over
congrats.
vacation because at different stages that you go through, you need different things and you need different expertise. And someone who's been there and done that can get you there so much faster.
And
So,
can I just say that
yeah.
there's a difference between asking for help in corporate and being seen as you don't have it all together and you can't handle it and you don't have all the answers versus asking for help as an entrepreneur. As an
Yes.
entrepreneur, it's almost celebrated,
Yeah.
right? It's like, proud of you, good job for getting help. But I know in corporate, having worked in some large corporations, it was not seen like that. So that's a huge mindset shift that you have to really think about, and dig into, that it's not something to be ashamed of to need help as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and the other thing you said that is really important is that you built your business around what you wanted.
Mhm.
And, sometimes when we first get started, we're thinking, oh, well, because I have this expertise, I should go and be a consultant and do the same thing. And
Mm.
that's not necessarily true.
No.
So you get to choose your own adventure in entrepreneurship as well. So now I'm super curious about the 90-day framework,
Mhm.
the 4-pillar foundation that will help our listeners get from where they are to where they want to be if scaling a business is something that they truly want.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, once I got back from that 30-day trip in 2012, I spent the next 5 years of my franchising really fine-tuning everything. It got to the point that I was working 16 hours a week. I was working remotely for those 5 years between here in Florida and back in Massachusetts. And I had a team of 17 women in the office and 150 staff out in the field, just to show you the scale of how big it was. And I would come back to Massachusetts and they would be like, "Why are you here? We don't need you." So I really fine tuned everything to get to the point where that business truly ran like a machine. And that was what I wanted. And it's not for everyone, right? I
Mhm.
loved what I was doing in my business. I was working on big picture vision and forecasting and planning and all of those kinds of things and really becoming that leader. Um, and it was so interesting because everyone in my franchise network was starting to pay attention and saying, "How is she doing that?" Right. And they couldn't understand how I had gone on to triple that $1 million revenue, reduce my hours from 80 to 16. And they just didn't understand it. And then that vibe really started to spread in the community. People weren't seeing me as often in the community because I was traveling and they wanted to know. So after those 10 years, I sold the business after 5, and women started saying to me like, "How did you do it? How did you build this multi-million dollar business in these part-time hours and still live your life?" And so when I sat down and broke out what I actually did during those 2 years, it came down to 4 core pillars, and that's what I call my legacy business system. And those 4 pillars, when I went on to start business coaching, is really what every successful business has. They utilize them every single day, whether it's Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, they all have them in their business. And so, what I developed was this system for women to go through those 4 core pillars over a 90-day period. And the reason I chose 90 days is because, sure, we could have spread them out over 6 months, but I remember what I felt like back in 2010 sitting in my car crying on like totally burnt out. I know that the most of the women that I work with have hit that point of they're ready to either close, quit, or sell. And so 90 days is like, okay, I can do anything for 90 days, right?
Mhm.
We can get through anything for 90 days. 6 months, that's kind of a longer period. And so the program is fast paced, but without the fluff. And it really walks you through from the first point, as I said, of what do you want? Because what you want, Deb, versus what I want is not the same. And I found that so many women in business have built a cookie cutter business based on cookie cutter business advice, right? Everyone says right now you need to have a free guide, you need to have a funnel, you need to do this, right? You need to do this. Well, you don't, right? Like if that's not your business model, then don't build it that way, right? You need to bring in leads and convert them to sales, but you can do it your way. So we start with what you want for your business and we go through everything of what makes your business unique. What is the signature offer that you're going to offer, whether that's a product or a service, to implementing systems so you can have your services or products on repeat. We build you a support team that doesn't need to be micromanaged. And then we wrap everything up and we streamline with tech tools and automations because that's where the sweet spot is in business. If you truly want to scale, you either need to have a human or you need to have technology doing all the things that are outside your zone of genius. When you can get that in place, that's when scaling becomes easier.
Yeah. And when you were going from 40 hours a week to 16 hours a week, give us an example of one of the processes that you were able to systematize and scale. Because everyone says that, and then people sit down and say, "Well, I don't know what operating procedures I need to put in place." You give
Mhm.
us an example?
Yeah, I would say very simply, I started a daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly planning system. I find that I love technology, right? But we need to have the basic systems of how to plan your day, right? And what is it like? What are the hours that you're going to work and what are you going to do during those hours? And then how are you going to plan your week? So that way you have time to not only grow your business, but also live your life and do other things that you want to do during that week, to looking at your monthly planning system. What numbers do you need to crunch, right? How do you assess your business and how things went during the month? And then I am huge on 90 days, so quarterly planning systems. I run one for my community every 90 days because that was part of the secret to my success was sitting down and looking at key things for the past 90 days and putting a plan together for the next 90 days. So if you're at a point in your business and you're like, okay, where do I start with systems? The first system is getting a control on where you're spending your time. And you do that by having a daily plan, a weekly plan, a monthly and a quarterly, and really just kind of it just zooms it out. What am I working on today, this week,
Mhm.
this month, this quarter? And it allows you to really laser focus on what moves the needle in your business.
Yeah, that's so important. And you're not the first one that has mentioned the 90-day plan. We do the same thing. We have a 100-day plan.
Mhm.
Um, uh, but it's so important to not just do an annual plan and set it and forget it and then kind of go on automatic pilot and then wait till the end of the year and see how you did. So, this is, and especially in this climate where it's so important to keep your pulse on what's going on in your market and to tweak your offers and be innovative and experimental. So it's not a season where you can just set it and forget it. I think, several years ago, if we're talking 2019, 20, 21, 22, those were kind of set it and forget it times. If something was working in your business and your marketing strategy was working, your products were working, then maybe you were adding upsells and things like that. But things were running pretty smoothly and growth was easy. Growth is not easy now. And so, what are you advising your clients who are looking for growth in those 90-day sprints when they look back and say, this last quarter did not turn out exactly the way I imagined it would. Like, how are you advising people to pivot and make changes?
Yeah, you're so right. In the land that we live in right now, things are like on fast forward. And
Mhm,
if you're not looking at where you are in your business, you're gonna wake up one day and feel behind.
mhm,
So let me give you an example of a client. So she had a boutique business, and she had four revenue streams, and she had been in business for 4 years, and so experienced entrepreneur, but she was six figures, on the verge of burnout, ready to like throw in the towel. And she was thinking about expanding one of her revenue streams. And I said to her, okay, take this spreadsheet that's in my signature program, and I want you to go put all your numbers in and then bring it back to me. And we'll talk about, what you should expand in this. And she came back 2 weeks later and she's like, you're not going to believe this, but I have lost money every single month for the past year in this revenue stream. And I was like, okay. So now the question is back to, should you expand? And she was like, absolutely not. And so this is the thing, is you really have to have a pulse on not only where you're spending your time and those kinds of things as you're planning, but where you're spending your money and where you're making the most profit.
mhm,
When we dug into her numbers, we realized that one of her lowest out of the four revenue generators was her highest profit maker. And so, if she took the energy from that fourth one and put it into that profit producing one, then she could scale that without having to work more hours. And so that's what she did, is she essentially reduced her hours almost overnight by like 20 a month. And then she dialed into that profit producing revenue stream. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'm automatically making more money and not working as many hours. And so you really need to look at where your business is, what's working, and have the data. When we do the 90-day planning, I ask women to look at as many numbers as they possibly have, right? So if you have just 2025, that's great. If you have a prior year, go look at that and see what's working, not only revenue wise, but profit wise. So that way it's like, okay, where are those hidden gems that we're missing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Profitability analysis is not something that everyone does. And, there's a lot in your profitability, including your time and the time you
Mhm.
spend marketing to acquire those clients, the time you spend serving those clients, the staff that you have, the materials, all of that. And that's brilliant advice because you do want to narrow down and focus in on your most profitable offer. What
Mhm.
is the one thing that you want to make sure that our audience walks away with today out of this conversation, Salen? What is the number one most important thing that they need to take away if their desire is to scale past seven figures?
No, I think the most important thing is to really figure out what it is you want for your life, right? After working and owning a senior home care business for 10 years and being in the industry 3 years prior, I can tell you firsthand, no one at the end of their life ever said to me, I wish I had worked more.
Mm.
They expressed their regrets to me at the end of their life. I wish I had a better relationship with my spouse. I wish my kids were coming to see
Mm.
me versus me paying you, right? I wish I had taken that trip. I wish. And it honestly was what I needed when I was experiencing burnout. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be like them and have regrets at the end of my life.
Mm.
And so, the biggest thing that I would love for your audience to take stock in today is, really, what do you want? It's your life in your business, and you really need to dig into, when do you want to work? What lights you up? Right? What do you not only want to sell for an offer, but also service, right? Like, what do you want to continue providing? And whatever comes out of that exercise, to really think about, okay, it's yes, it can be scary to maybe pivot a little bit in business,
Mhm.
but with support, and I know you offer so much support, Deb, in your program, that you can make the pivots to build a business that will support the dream lifestyle that you want. You can make money in 2025 and beyond however the heck you want, but it will be so much more fun and enjoyable to make it if it's a business that you truly enjoy and love. So, uh, don't think that you have forever to make pivots if you're not feeling that joy and excitement to work on your business and do what needs to be done. Then work with a coach who can help guide you through the process of making whatever pivots you need in order to live your best life.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if our listeners want to get more information about you, Sailynn, and learn more about your offers, where do they go?
Yeah, so the best place is to connect with me on my website or social media. My website is passionpurposeposture.com, or they can connect with me on any social media platform at Sailynn Doyle. That's every platform.
And we'll post those links in the comments as well, so you can just scroll down and click. Sailynn, thank you so much for kicking off our post Labor Day back to school special show today. It's been so much fun.
Thank you so much. And I had never heard that terminology, the tumbleweed. I've lived in resort communities now for almost 10 plus years, and I've never heard that. So I love it.
Well, it's particular to after Labor Day, and if you're a snowbird resort
Mhm.
community, then you probably have a different day where all the snowbirds go back north. But it's that moment when you realize that you can take your breath and go, "Ah, I've reclaimed my village. I can go to the beach and it's not crowded." So we always do interesting things in the fall. We're hosting a retreat in the Hamptons the last week in September for our clients. So really looking forward to that. So
That will be amazing. It is the perfect time to enjoy the Hamptons now that everyone else is gone.
exactly. Well, thank you so much, Sailynn. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the show today. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you got some value out of it, we'd appreciate it if you take a moment, subscribe to the show, leave us a rating if you're on Apple iTunes, leave us a review if you're on Apple Podcasts, and we will see you next time on Life After Corporate. Thank you.